Welcome to the Art of Badassery, where I explore what it takes to live life on your own terms, break free from the status quo, and unleash your inner badass. Whether you're a rebel at heart or simply seeking inspiration to step outside your comfort zone, this podcast is for you. I'm your host, Mahara Wayman, and each week I dive into the stories, insights, and strategies of those who have mastered the art of badassery and are living life to the fullest. They smile when no one is looking. Welcome to the Art of Badassery. I'm your host, Mahara Wayman, and today I have the pleasure of chatting with the amazing Amanda Wallingsford. She is the CEO and founder of Align and Embody Coaching. Her journey from Colorado to the East Coast and now settling in Texas is truly remarkable. From earning a full scholarship to Vanderbilt University, where she majored in human and organizational development, to her 13 years at a nonprofit in San Diego, supporting at-risk youth and becoming a marriage and family therapist, she has shown unwavering dedication. But it doesn't stop there, folks. Amanda has expanded into life coaching and authorship, embracing personal growth and helping others. Her love for water activities, dance, and painting embodies the spirit of creativity and exploration. Join us today as we uncover her inspiring story and learn how to embrace our journey of self-discovery. Welcome to the Art of Badassery, Amanda. I'm so happy to have you on the show.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. I'm so happy to get this chance to talk with you and to support you.
Aw. So for those of you that don't know, Amanda and I have been, we were in a course at the same time, but this is the first time really that we are getting to chat with each other one-to-one. And I've already in the pre-show conversation learned so much. One of the things that Amanda shared was she's had some very challenging opportunities for growth in her life. And Amanda, I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind if we sort of go back in time and start with one of the things that happened to you where you said by your own admission was the beginning of some major change and challenges.
Yes, absolutely. And I love how you framed that opportunities for growth. And when we spoke, how pain can bring growth. And I am living proof of that. So rewinding to one of the most significant events in my life is losing my biological father to suicide when I was 19 years old. And he was in and out of my life. I loved him very much, but our relationship was inconsistent. And then found out that he took his life. And immediately after that, I had already had a history of exposure to suicide, but immediately after that, I really went into let me study it, let me understand mental health. How did this happen? I really got in my head. I got very intellectual and academic about it. That was my way of coping. And about 2 years later, my body had gone into full-blown major depression, anxiety. And at the time we didn't know it because it wasn't a thing, but really what had happened is I had been experiencing PTSD. But we didn't have those terms. We didn't have the symptoms named. We didn't know what it looked like. But as an example, I was about November, I'm not sure which year, maybe 2000. No, I'm not sure. I had lost 30 pounds in 1 month from no appetite, from anxiety, depression. I mean, I just nosedived and started my healing journey, but didn't know how. And so hit a couple bumps in the road and to the point of some passive suicide attempts and self-injury. And the last time that it really hit rock bottom, I actually think about this, full disclosure, I asked God, should I still be here? And I was still here. And so it was a commitment from that point going, I don't know why I'm supposed to be here, but I'm going to figure out how to get better. I had taken a semester off from college and started going to intense therapy, things like that. But I started my deep, deep healing and growth journey, which is, as you probably know, is a constant journey. But that's when it was the messiest, the ickiest, the hardest. But I had decided, okay, we're going to figure out how to put all these pieces back together.
Wow, so so powerful. Thank you for sharing that story with us. And I'm so moved by your courage because to your point, you were very young. You know, I think when I was a teenager, I thought when you're 20, oh my God, you're an old woman, right? And now I'm in my late 50s and I'm like, oh my God, what was I thinking? Really, very young when you were facing this terrible tragedy. Would you mind talking a little bit more? Because you used the phrase passive suicide. It's the first time I've heard it, and I explained it because there may be people listening that it's tweaked a little bit of interest in them. So can you just talk a little bit more about what you mean by that phrase?
Yeah. Um, so there's a kind of passive and active. It's kind of the two terms that we call it in the mental health field. And passive is more, I've got an idea, maybe I'm going to do this. So I had taken ibuprofen. That's not a lethal dose. I just wanted to sleep. I wanted escape from pain. So it was more of a kind of toying with it, but not necessarily wanting death. Whereas active is very, my goal is to end my life. And at the crux of most people, it's I actually want to end my pain. That's it, regardless of which type. But there's just more, it's kind of the modality. So, taking a non-lethal dose of something, but just to fall asleep. But there's suicidal thoughts in there, but it's not to the point of, say, as such as my father using a weapon that was very clear, active, suicidal action.
So I'm curious, when you were going through this phase, were there others that recognized it in you? Or was it your studies, your self studies that recognized it?
Oh my gosh, I love that question because it was my studies. There was nothing around me telling me what was happening. I was reading a book. It was an adolescent development class, and I'm just reading, academically reading, oh, there's a symptom of depression. There's a symptom of depression. I'm like, oh no. Oh, I've got it. But then it was like still my high performing. No, I'm fine. I'm going to power through this. PTSD wise, I'd only heard of it in one class, a different one, only in veterans. There was almost nothing about PTSD that I had no idea I was experiencing flashbacks. I was experiencing hypervigilance. Um, I did not realize, even as a trauma specialist, I did not realize it was PTSD till probably 10, 15 years later. So, yeah, it was definitely an academic thing because mental health I mean, you've lived through it where mental health has made leaps and bounds, exposure.
Absolutely. It's actually kind of interesting because just the other day I was chatting with one of my children and I, I was a bit dismissive about the University of Google. And I was like, sweetheart, I really would prefer that could you just book an appointment and go to the doctor? And she's like, you do know that the doctor's going to Google it too. It took me back and I went, oh, okay. And then she reminded me that something very important in our lives came up because of her. She's studying psychiatry,
Okay.
and it came up through her Googling and through her studies. And it was a highlight to me and my behavior. So I had to concede that, okay, Google wasn't all bad, but
Mm-hmm.
we are talking about mental health so much more. Um, and I'm so glad that you took, and I don't want to say took the bait, but that you took the opportunity to study. because I truly believe we are, spiritual beings having a human existence. And that's tough work. And when we step up to do the learning, it does get easier. And whether the signs come are very overt, somebody knocks you over the head and says, read this book, or there's a little niggle of intuition, read this,
Mm-hmm.
talk to this
Yeah.
person, turn around, go back into the store, whatever that is,
Huh?
listen to it. We have the opportunity for some peace at the end. So I love that you took advantage of that. So 2 years after your biological father's passing, you hit rock bottom. You were in studies. You began to realize that you needed some serious help. What what next?
So I took the semester off. I went to a psychologist about 2 times a week, and I thought, how is this dude going to help me? It was very flat affect, very serious. But he started me on my journey with cognitive behavior therapy, understanding how our thoughts influence our emotions and our behaviors. And spent a lot of time with my parents because I also have my adoptive dad who is my dad, and then my mom. Spent a lot of time with them, spent time with friends again from high school because I had gone back to Colorado. um Started, I guess I would say, learning about what self-care meant, what it looked like, um doing more art, dance, things like that. And then I went back to Vanderbilt, finished my senior year and graduated. And I continued therapy there. I've basically been in some form of talk healing or interpersonal healing ever since. I do really well with that. So I've done therapy, I've hired coaches, I've done group therapy. I do really well with meeting with people, whether one-on-one or together, to be able to process out loud. And so gathering techniques, but also to just have that space held for me. Um, so I'd say those are the major points that happened in my healing journey after that.
I like that you brought up this idea of group and having space held for you, because one of the things that I've always felt was that humans need other humans.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I do group coaching, and I know, I witness the miracle and the magic of just sitting with people, whether it's on Zoom uh,
Mm-hmm.
for the last few years or in person. There is magic when the energy of humans, they come together for a common purpose. And even if it's to sit in silence and just say, I see you,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
tears are flowing down my face. People have looked at me and said, I see you. And it
Yeah.
is visceral. I've had such a visceral reaction to that um, acceptance.
Yes. Yes.
I'm like, wow, they see the real me, not not the mom that's struggling, not the entrepreneur that's lost, not
Mm-hmm.
not the teenager that's in a new, teenager from a different country that's struggling to fit in. They see just the human being, and there's magic in that. Why do
Right.
you think it has taken us so long as a society to embrace this? Because where I am today, and I even said it to my children, like, and they've said to me, why weren't we taught this in school? And I'm like, I don't know. It's curious that as a society, we're what, 20,023, and now we're just really getting into the meat of what it is that we need as people. Why do you think that is?
I think there's so many cultural components. That's what first comes to mind. If we look at maybe the cultural component, at least in the United States, for example, that the top value is live the American dream. And the American dream often includes be independent, be a high achiever, just keep your, like keep focused. And in that can come some isolation. If we're trying to always get to the top and we get kind of told that it's, the messages that I've gotten several times is you can just do, you can do and be whatever you want. But that means just yourself. It's not in community. And so I don't know if that came from competition. I don't know if it came from territorial dominance, I don't know, but it there's definitely a lot of cultural components that say the way to do this is to do it yourself, to be independent versus autonomous in community. You can be autonomous, but be in community and be in connection with others.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. The other thing that comes to mind, and just so you guys know, when I ask questions, I'm like, oh, that's a good question. I don't have to come up with, I didn't have an answer. But
I
what
do the same thing.
my mind was somewhere along the line, we accepted that worthiness was found outside of us.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, absolutely.
And like you, I was raised in Canada. I'm from Jamaica, but I was raised in Canada. And I grew up with this idea that I had to get the gold ticket, get the
Uh-huh.
prize number
Uh-huh.
percentage
Mm-hmm.
in order to be valued. And and let's be very clear. I grew up in a beautiful family, lots of love. I'm the youngest of four, laughed, had friends, very privileged. And yet I still felt that I wasn't quite there yet. If I
Mm-hmm.
a raise, if I didn't have the great job, if I didn't
Mm-hmm.
have a degree. Um,
Yeah.
and it's perpetuated for lots of different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Finding now in where I'm at as a life coach and an author and somebody like you that's done all the deep work is, oh my God, worthiness is intrinsic.
Mm-hmm.
I was given life, I'm worthy.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing else I need to do. The mere
Yep.
fact that I exist proves that I'm worthy. Um,
Yes.
it is it's a hard, it can be very difficult for people because, like we said, both of us, we've been raised in a society that values the outside.
Mm-hmm.
Get the good job, marry the good husband, or have a good husband, raise nice
Yes.
children. And yet,
Yes.
many of us, for lots of different reasons, have this emptiness inside. So the work that you do is amazing. I would love to hear more about the 13 years that you spent in San Diego and how
Okay.
really filled your cup and propelled you to where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. I knew from a very young age, and actually I can kind of combine with what you were just talking about, worth, and then uh, the direction into my career. So my worthiness wound came from my biological father not being around. And I internalized that there must be something wrong with me. And I battled that by being a high achiever, doing the all the outside stuff. But there was something that I also saw within him. I saw a wound and I had deep empathy from a very young age. I didn't know what it was, but I could feel empathy in others, that I could see that they were struggling. And so I would say from the age of about 12, I knew I wanted to be a helper. I knew I wanted to be a counselor of some sort. And because I could even see in him, even though I internalized as a child that there was something wrong with me, I knew that the root came from his own worthiness wound. And so that's where, when I went to Vanderbilt, I chose Vanderbilt because of human and organizational development. And under that had health and human services and child and adolescent development. And so started my social service career there at a runaway shelter. And then when I moved to San Diego, I got hired. It took a couple jumps to. I did some residential treatment with youth, but then got to this amazing nonprofit in San Diego called SBCS, and started case management there. So worked with at-risk youth. And San Diego has a phenomenal philosophy on assisting youth, which is always family and community focused. And that to support a child, we need to have everybody involved. And so the programs I worked with, all of them were either at risk for entering the juvenile justice system, or they were already involved in the juvenile justice system, had already committed some kind of crime and been charged with it. And so I did multiple programs. I helped with a runaway shelter. I helped run a girls empowerment I am trying to remember what it was called. Wings, but it was girls case management. Did a whole bunch of stuff, and one of the best pieces of advice I got in undergrad was go do the work and then decide what you want to do as far as licensure or like kind of more of your niche in the career. And that's when, after doing that work, I decided that marriage and family therapy was the best route for me. So then I went back to grad school, got that degree, got that license, and currently still do therapy, but also have the coaching on the side.
Well, before we jump into talking about your book and the coaching that you have now, um, I want to go back to your working with these kids.
Mm-hmm.
Think of a time or an example where you learned something profound by working with these children. I'm curious.
Oh gosh, I learned so much. Um, I, th- I learned so much. There's so much that we as service providers get back. And I think even as coaches, like we get so much more than what people might think. Um, what I would say working with the youth is that really sticks out to me, excuse me, is this is it's a concept I put in my book, but that we all have survival strategies. We have been wounded in some way, and we seek to get to cope through that wound, to survive through that wound. And so we create these strategies to do the very best we can. That's all we're doing. And so it's whether it's a youth or it's the parent that's parenting that youth that got in trouble. I worked with a lot of families who first generation Mexican Americans and their families had desired, we're going to bring our child over to the United States, give them the very best, and they would have to work 3, 4 jobs to make ends meet. So then they were kind of absent in the home. And instead of make a judgment of why are you not in the home, it's looking at they are trying to survive the best they can and help their children survive the best they can. So really developing even a deeper empathy and understanding for the human experience and condition, and that every one of us is really just innocently trying to get through life.
That is such a powerful lesson. And it reminds me of, I had a guest on recently and she was talking about internal family systems.
Mm-hmm.
I just finished a retreat where we talked about, the stories that we tell ourselves and how
Mm-hmm.
my partner coach refers to it as we have a board of directors and they all have a role. But the bottom line, what I hear from what you're just saying, internal family systems, board of directors, is that we, everything we do, we are doing as a way to survive.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it works or not, that's like level 2 of the question.
Yep.
But
Yeah.
we are doing the best that we can with what we have in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
then for many of us, when we reach adulthood, is that we've created stories from childhood that worked for us then, but no longer work for us. But we're so used to the story, we're so used to the behavior that we don't question it.
Yeah.
I'm sure that you found this as well, that sometimes the stories just come up. You don't even
Mm-hmm.
realize you're saying it until you take a moment to sort of, wait a second, what did I just say? What is
Mm-hmm.
the moment? And that's a lot of what we do as coaches is invite our clients to just sit with our feelings because they're not wrong, but
Mm-hmm.
the secrets behind in the feelings, like the
Yeah.
logic is in the power behind that feeling or that emotion or those words that you're saying.
Right.
So I love that experience sort of solidified that for you. It also brings up this idea of judgment, how easy it is for us to live in judgment of others. And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
lesson that must have been, and I'm sure continues to be, is wow, I'm only hurting myself,
Mm-hmm.
person, or by judging myself.
Right.
Um,
Right.
yeah, so much growth in that. So 13 years of doing,
Mm-hmm.
now you've moved on to something a little bit different. Can we talk about where you're at today?
Yes, absolutely. Let's see. I moved to Texas here 9 years ago, I think. And I went into a nonprofit right when I moved, and then I went into private practice with therapy. I had kind of vaguely heard about coaching, what is this? What do people do? I'd heard of, fitness coaches or health coaches. And then, as you know, Alyssa, who runs the Institute for Coaching Mastery, I actually went to graduate school with her the very first year that we were in graduate school. And so I had seen her stuff and I'm like, how did she get into coaching? What's this about? And so I started looking at kind of her style and started looking at when would we use a therapist versus a coach, and then started looking at that for me because I had already done so many years of therapy. And there's so many different modalities in the therapy world too. Like you said, IFS, I hadn't learned about that till a couple years ago. I had already thought about the survival strategies, and then IFS kind of gave some more concrete names to it. So in the last couple of years, I've been developing kind of how I want to approach coaching and what my focus would be. And like you said earlier, it's a group coaching program is where the meat is in my coaching program. Because what I ended up doing was joining Alyssa's program, and I felt the power of being in community like I had never felt before. And I had run groups, I had run therapy groups before, like for the teens. I had been in group therapy, as I had mentioned to you before we got on the call, and I know that this is a totally different topic, but I had lost my infant son 3 years ago due to a genetic condition. I went directly into group therapy after that. My husband and I both did. And so felt the power of group, and which has then combined with Alyssa's program has told me that my next way of serving is to bring people together. But also in that time after losing my son, I got this idea to write a book. And that also, then I have just finished it. I mean, it's we are within 1 month of getting it in print. I'm waiting on testimonials and the final edits to the internal layout. But really want to be able to serve through. I had combined all these tools that I've been using over the years for myself and others, and want to be able to serve in a much broader sense by saying, here's some tangible stuff you can do for yourself. And we didn't mention this yet. The book is called Embody Your Worth. So it's all tools to own being a badass, to own that you were born without conditions. You were born beautifully, completely worthy. And it's not about what you achieve. It's not about what you do. It's that you are deserving already of a life you dream of.
Oh, I can't wait. And I do want to jump into the book a little bit more, but before we do that, um, let's talk a little bit more about the difference between therapy and coaching. If
Yes.
you wouldn't mind, you're the perfect guest to talk about that and really explain to our listeners exactly why you feel they complement each other, if in fact you do feel that way. But really, explain.
Yeah.
What,
Yeah. Therapy is generally we're looking at struggling with something big internally inside that might bring out mental health symptoms such as depression or anxiety, and trying to get the body, the mind, the emotions to a optimal baseline functioning. That's going to be a lot of the people who come to therapy. They're struggling, they're not functioning as well as they used to, and they want to get back to being able to live a day without a panic attack, want to be able to sleep well at night, being able to manage stress. So that, and then there's also a lot of looking at past stuff, going towards the past. How did this come to be? What's the root of this? Coaching is going to be more around, I am at my baseline or even higher, but I want to get even deeper and higher to my fullest capacity, to my next goal. And coaching is different in the sense that there's a little bit more of accountability and structure on kind of action plan versus exploration. You and I are both trained to go inside, go deep, but we don't stay there. It's a touch. It's like, okay, that's where it comes from. Let's come back to the now and figure out how do we put our puzzle pieces together to get to that next level. I love that you use the word complement because they really can complement each other. It doesn't have to be a one or the other. I have done that where I've used both, where I go to my therapy and I'm like, okay, let's go back to that memory when I was 7 and I was so heartbroken and I need to really release the trauma from that situation. And then use a coach to go, okay, I am rocking it, but that little worthiness story is getting in my way because I'm not showing up as fully as I can, if that all makes sense.
Perfect sense. And I'm very visual. So as you were explaining, what I saw was somebody, they travel up to a certain point of quote normality or where they can function and
Mm-hmm.
have the ability to view themselves without the pain because
Mm-hmm.
spot, then they can also view themselves a little bit higher or
Mm-hmm.
an elevated place without the pain.
Oh, I love that. Yes.
It's a way of, yes, we're going to get to that place, but first we got to get you here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Recognize your potential or what it is that you want. Because I know, even from personal experience, there was a time when I didn't, despite my creativity, when somebody said to me, "What do you dream about?" I didn't have an answer. And
Mm-hmm.
that to me was, first of all, I was gobsmacked. How do I mean, I've been daydreaming all my life, but I recognized in that moment that I wasn't being asked, what do I daydream about? Because to me, there's a difference. A daydream is something that's to play with. It's like a favorite book that never it's going to happen because it's just a story versus what the dream that I have for myself. And I think when the human condition is such that you can't see the dream for yourself, you need to get there first. You can't ask somebody down here to daydream a beautiful life when they can't even
Yeah.
comprehend, they can't even articulate what that looks like. So to
Yeah.
me, definitely I see it complementing both. So thank you for your description of that.
Absolutely.
So I'm so excited about your book. I've written a book. I know what goes into
Mm-hmm.
writing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm incredibly proud of you. I just want to say that. I am proud of you for taking an incredibly painful moment, your son's passing, and recognizing that this is yet again an opportunity for growth. And not only for your own growth, but a chance to really share and affect, you know, literally hundreds of thousands of people when they read this book or when they hear your story. Can we talk a little bit about when you realized that your son's passing or your son's birth was more powerful than what you felt in that moment?
Yes. My son, it's an interesting story in the sense that um, at 11 weeks, they found fluid in his nucleal fold, which is that in the neck. Um, it's not a good thing when they find fluid there. Um, and we were told that day, in the plainest of words, your child is going to die within a week. And they gave us this one doctor gave us options. They handed us pamphlets of if we wanted to terminate the pregnancy, but they didn't know what the fluid was for. And so we said, you know what, we want to wait because it was a substitute doctor that day. We want to wait to get the ultrasound specialist back in, and he's here. So no, we're not going to move forward with terminating this. Well, lo and behold, I have a son who made it to birth. In those weeks, he was born, I think, at 34 weeks. Um, and in that time, we discovered he had what's called Noonan syndrome. And it's a genetic condition that really ranges from nothing's wrong with you to everything's wrong with you. Heart defects, things like that. And we knew he had a heart defect in utero, but we didn't know what that was going to look like when he came out. So he made it. He got here. And he was here for 98 days. But what that Noonan syndrome did that made him not survive was his lymphatic system. And the lymphatic system is very hard to understand, but it's basically allowing fluid to move throughout your body. The way his body was is it was all dead ends. So instead of like blood going back to the heart, for example, it just kind of reached dead ends and had to somehow come back out. So he unfortunately got very sick. And we had to decide that it was time to let him go and that was the best thing for him. It was the most heart-wrenching day, but I will also say it was also the most beautiful day to ever experience, to do the best thing for him. But also it created my true belief in heaven, that he was going to go back to be with God and in his most innocent, beautiful form. And in that moment, even my husband and I, we knew we were going to be okay. We were going to get through it. And so I started exploring, how did I know I was going to be okay compared to when I had lost my father? And it was because I knew that I had really discovered my place on this earth. And I thank him that there's a song and it says, now I'm forgetting the words, of course, but I hope all the better parts of me come out because of you. And that's kind of how I wanted to handle it. Is we have very much grieved. We have done a lot of healing and honored our grief, but I also wanted to then share with others, how do you get to this place of feeling at peace while saying goodbye to your child and choosing to live even with that in my history.
What's your son's name?
His name is Ashton.
What a brave, beautiful soul.
He is.
Um,
He is.
Amanda, thank you for sharing that story with us.
So welcome. Thank you for holding it and hearing it.
So brave. So your book is called Embody Your Worth. So aligned with my message of being badass. I'll tell a little story that, and another guest actually alluded to this as well, is the word badass has a different connotation for different generations. And there are, my mother-in-law really struggles with that word. And she goes, I just don't understand why you would use that word in your marketing. Like, really, who wants to be a badass? People don't. And it was so interesting because the old me, before doing all the work, would have and gotten very defensive. And the new me said, wow, that's so interesting. Why do you say that? And I refer to it as being a generational thing because she's a little bit older than me, obviously. And she grew up in a generation where badasses were bad, right? They didn't care about anybody else. They didn't care about authority. They were preferred at everybody. They had tattoos everywhere. And of course, I have a tattoo now. But, it was just a different idea. And today, I embrace the idea that being a badass is just being yourself, whatever that is, in all of your glory. And that includes embodying your worth, not just thinking it in your heart or wishing for it or praying for it, but absolutely standing up and saying, hello, hello, I'm here. How lucky are you to know me? I'm here. Be of an obnoxious nature, but have it be a real recognition that we are all children of the universe, God, spirit, source, whatever word resonates with you. And we are all here for a reason. And I heard something in a podcast, um, Dr. Wayne Dyer, one of his children were talking about that they learned from their father that a lifetime can be full is full, even if it's shorter than we want. So every lifetime is a full lifetime. And I think that ties into this idea of embodying your worth. Your worth isn't determined by how long you are on this earth. Your worth isn't determined by how much money you make or how what you look like. Your worth is embodied within the time frame that you choose to be here on this earth, whether it is 98 days and what Ashton had, or it's 98 years. You know, time is something that we put on our lives as humans. We're what, you know, the person that, you know, the group, the time frame that came up with the clock. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Yeah. Yep.
We revolve, the sun revolves around the earth, and we created time, but it can hold us back, and it can be very constraining. So I love the fact that you have taken all of the stuff that you've learned, starting with going back to when you were a little girl, to the pain of your father's death by suicide, to all of the children that you worked with and the families that you worked with, to the loss of your son, and you've turned it into something amazingly beautiful. When talk to us a little bit more about the book. How did it, when did you get the idea to write it? How did the idea of the title come to you?
Um, I love those questions. So when, you know, I was so surrounded by love after Ashton left, and having conversations and even somebody saying, I am shocked at how well you're doing. And it was a genuine, like, I'm doing well, I'm not faking it. I had started going back to work full time, and but really balanced taking care of myself. That did not get neglected. And so I just became really curious, like, how am I okay? I, I was shocked, honestly, because of how much um, deaths prior, because there's a few other ones that I've experienced, but how much death and grief had really rocked my core before in my life. And so I just did a lot of brainstorming. I wrote down a bunch of ideas. How did I get here? And then for some reason, I put it in a PowerPoint, and I don't know why, but I sat down with my mom and we like arranged, okay, how would the chapters go? Because I think this is coming out to be a full book. I did a lot of exploration on titles and um, a lot of playing around. And then one day, I don't know from where, but I just got, okay, it's Embody Your Worth. I think that was maybe 6 months after Ashton passed, that this was about not just talking the talk, because I had learned for years when I was younger, smile, be happy, just do this to love yourself. Just these, I call it, I refer to it as toxic positivity, and if you've heard of that, I would assume. And I wanted it to be beyond just this kind of nice little manual that's, if you could easily do this. I wanted to really get into, how do we walk the walk of embodying our worth, instead of just kind of the blanket statements of just put a smile on your face, and if you believe you're worthy, you're going to be worthy. So brainstormed basically my top strategies, the most influential things that I mapped out 2 stages of my growth. And so, like, cognitive behavior therapy, is, I mentioned it in there, that was learning to understand how my thoughts. So I've got a chapter on understanding your thoughts and how that influences your sense of worth. And so I
Oh,
think
so much goodness. So much goodness. Congratulations. So we can expect this in print within a month?
I think so. I Everything's done on my end. So a little bit of uh external, waiting for the layout to finish their stuff, and then on endorsements that I want to be able to include. But yeah, it's I can't, as you see, I have a huge smile on my face. I am, when you were talking about earlier, judging, I am my biggest critic, as so many of us. And it's not going to be good. It's not going to be good. What if it's not good? What if it, and all that. And this final product after editing and, writing a book and all the steps that go into it. And does this make sense? Does it not? Is it going to land? Are people going to judge it? And doing so much inner work even around that at this point, I love the book. And I know it's going to be meant for the people it needs to be meant for.
I am so excited. And to your point, my goodness, I've told the story before, I don't think on the podcast, but when I self-published my book, just and I was on the front lawn and getting ready to press the button. And it took me a couple hours to actually press it. And when I did press it, I burst into tears and I sobbed all afternoon. And all of the fear, all of the angst, I love that word, all of the angst that I had navigated through just came bubbling up to the surface and I just wept. And I ended up asking myself a lot of questions, just like you said earlier. And I wanted to highlight that, guys, for those of you that are listening, when in doubt, get curious, because curiosity is your path to everything that you want. Get really crystal clear on why you acted that way, felt that way, said that thing, did that thing. Just get curious without judgment. I am saying it's easy because saying that, oh my God, you did that because you're a bitch, or you said that because you're selfish. But really just continue the questions to get curious about why. Because if you have the courage to get curious, it'll be like a beacon. And I liken it to being surrounded by angels that are just waiting for me to get it. And the minute I get it, they're like, oh, thank God, Mahara got it. Okay, something else to work with now. So I love that you said that you got curious. I love it. Sounds like you've laid the book out really well for us to learn from it. And I cannot wait for it to come out. And so, folks listening, don't worry. By the time this episode airs, the book will be published. I'll have a link for you to buy it directly in the show notes. We are so excited to support you. And Amanda, thank you so much for all of the stuff that you shared. I would be remiss if I didn't ask you to share with us your definition of being badass, just so we can link it to the podcast. And along with that definition, if you can share even one thing that you do on a regular basis that helps you to connect with that part of you, that inside part of you that is so solid and so strong, I would love it if you could share that with us as well.
Absolutely. My idea of a badass is so in line with why you're even doing the work you do. And that is to be unapologetically yourself. And that doesn't mean let me just be a jerk unapologetically. It means if you are hurting, name your hurt. Talk about it. Let it be there. We get so many societal messages of stuff it back up, put it back down, stop crying or whatever. If you're hurting, own it, be with it. If you're feeling joyful, go play with it. Go let it be there. And own your strengths, own what makes you special, own what makes you tick, because we need everybody here. There is no one right way. There's no one right person. We need everybody to really have a beautiful and fulfilling world and community. And then as far as one thing to do, this is interesting. I was just decided to do a new vision board the other day. And the very first thing I found, it made me laugh because it is so me. It says the best project you will ever work on is you. And so if you can do one thing, is see yourself as this beautiful project that really can, through doing the work, can reach a sense of peace, can find joy, even amidst pain. But that work for your project on yourself is going to look different. So it could be coaching, it could be therapy, it could be reading, could be groups, whatever it is. And there's no wrong or right way. I call it in my book, your healing toolbox. Find whatever is going to help you and put it in your toolbox. And that changes, as you know, sometimes it changes. We go through a season of wanting to be in community. We go through a season of wanting to be more intellectual and learn why do we function a certain way. So whatever it is, just keep committed and keep committed to yourself, to your life, to your growth. And that's what I would say.
I love that. And what vision that I got as you were talking was, I know for me, sometimes I just want to laugh. And now that, I have grown children, but I remember when they were little, I was like, oh my God, you're so easy to please. Like I'd buy you these beautiful fancy toys, and yet there you are in the kitchen cupboard playing with old nasty pots and pans. But I think, find the kid in us is a great, and that's what I got from what you said was, you know, ask the questions, do the work, do whatever needs to be done to make you feel good and to remind you that you matter. Because no one way is the only way, no one way is correct. The other visual I got from you, from what you were saying, is life is a tapestry. Every thread is important. Every person, every feeling, all of it weaves together to make this beautiful life. And it can be beautiful amidst the pain. And that was really powerful when you shared that. The work that we do, you and I as coaches, you as a therapist, um, as a mom, as a friend, all of those things, it is possible to smile amidst devastating pain. You don't have to be defined by the pain only.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be a one or the other. I think about the days that we celebrate Ashton's birthday and Ashton's Angel Day. We grieve and we also throw a party and we go visit a zoo, like we allow a flow between whatever emotion. And if we need to pull over and sob, we do that. And then we go see those animals at the zoo. It's like you said, all of it is welcome, and all of it really is what, when we embrace all of it and give permission for everything to be there, we learn how to flow through it and dance through it.
So beautiful. Amanda, I can't thank you enough. I have loved chatting with you, and I look forward to doing this again. For those of you that are listening, we welcome your feedback. As always, I will drop into the show notes all of the ways that you can connect with Amanda, and of course, purchase her amazing book that I know is going to really change lives. I feel so honored to have had this time with you. And thank you again for listening to The Art of Badassery. We'll see you next week.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to The Art of Badassery. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and gained valuable insights to help unleash your inner badass. If you found this podcast helpful, please leave a rating or review on your favorite platform. Your feedback not only helps me improve the show, but it also helps others like yourself discover the podcast. Until next time, keep embracing your authenticity and living life on your terms. Here's to you.